Hey guys, what is up? Lord Nick here bringing you another League of Legends related video. This is another episode of the Dangerous Game podcast. Before we get started, I wanted to thank you guys so much for watching the last episode and leaving your nice comments down below. It made me feel really great and it helped lift my spirits while I was really sick. I am still a little bit sick, so I might be coughing or sneezing, maybe blowing my nose a bit here on this episode as well. Also, wanted to let you know I'm going to be trying to do a new episode every Saturday. Tuesday was just kind of an abnormality. That was just me saying, hey, I'm back, I'm alive, I'm going to do another episode. So, every Saturday now I'm going to be trying to do one. So this episode specifically, though, is going to be about why NA as a region has sucked internationally and overall is just a bad region for League of Legends. Now, that being said, I'm going to do a disclaimer at the beginning. I don't think it doesn't have potential to be a good region. I feel like it just currently has a very bad competitive nature. And that's mostly systemic. And so I think we're going to kind of work on this video is going over the reasons that it's a systemic problem and not really a issue that is just kind of unknown. There's a lot of symptoms that have led to this big overall infection of the NA scene, really. And so, like, to start it off, let's just kind of go over those broad points real fast. Just kind of tell you what those broad points might be. Overall, it's just kind of a less competitive nature in North America, which is odd because we have a very high competitive scene in almost every other sport. It's just in North America, the amateur versions of everything is by far less competitive. In League of Legends specifically, and we'll be going in depth between amateurs in other sports and League and comparing the two, and also worse cultural understanding in this one. So the idea of video game culture is very different and unique in North America. We have a very odd video game culture here, as the video game enthusiasts find it as a very fun thing and, somewhat supportive of the competitive scene, while those that are not familiar with it are very toxic and negative towards it. Another big part of the North American culture is playing not to lose. Now, we will be going more in depth onto what is playing not to lose opposed to playing to win and the big differences between those. And then lastly, there is the extreme negative support of individuals within the community itself, right? Like, the fan base is a very negatively supporting fan base. They like to point out the flaws and the problems rather than express how excited they are about the success. Though there is expression of this, it is definitely outweighed by the sheer negative Nancys out there that are constantly causing these problems. So first off, we're going to be talking of those big four. The first one we're going to be talking about is less competitive. One second while I blow my nose and we'll get started. Man, oh man. Do not get sick, folks. It is not fun. So, less competitive nature. And so, what I mean by this is, when you're looking at the pros in League of Legends, their competitive drive seems a lot lessened by the fact of the system that has been in place and the fact that there's just not as many seeming competitive sports out there. And in the amateur scene, so just in the ranked solo queue ladder, there's a lot less competitively natured individuals. There's a lot of people that are playing the ladder just to play the ladder. They have a better chance of running into pros that way, or they just have more fun ruining the competitive nature for other people. So you're looking at it, there's trolls in every region, right? But the North American one has a lot of them that are just, not natured as trolls to begin with. They just kind of become trolls based off of the, nature that they suck at the game. And there's this misunderstanding that, ranked is not just for competitive, it's a game, guys. And that is the most common phrase used that will downtone and display any real chance of certain players for moving up. Because how do you become better when your opponents aren't taking it as seriously, when your teammates aren't taking it as seriously? You have to do a lot of individual work for it, and then on top of that, it's become more of a team play game. And if that's the case, you can't work on team play in solo queue because you're working with a lot of random people. So occasionally you'll get a very good team that wants to work on becoming better as individual players and learn how to work with new people, and that's good for you. But then most of the time you're also getting a lot of people that are like, I'm going to solo carry this game, get out of my way, if you guys feed I'll rage and I'll int and we'll lose the game. Like, you get a very wide range of people, and this inconsistency of player base is also a big part of what makes it a less competitive region. When you're looking in like Korea, for instance, or even China, these two regions have very high competitive spirits. Korea has outside law that also enforces you to be competitive in ranked, because if you go into ranked and you start trolling and stuff, you can actually be arrested in Korea. There's actual criminalization for doing that stuff. They have a completely different culture, and that's a big reason why they get a lot more success in terms of their competitive ladder. That being said, if you look at China, for instance, or Europe, both of them also have a very competitive ladder. And the reason why is competitive integrity is built more in their cultures. You look at like association football over in the European region, and this is built in at a young age. If you decide to get into football or any of the sports there, competitive integrity is a big part of the thing they drill in there. North America does not. Pee Wee American football, Warner football, Pop Warner leagues, and the lesser amateur stuff that you start training your kids from a young age to get good at. Some of your kids are going to start, becoming extremely competitive. And once you get into high school and stuff, these are going to be very competitive natured individuals. You don't have that same system for League of Legends yet. Really, all you have is, hey, I played solo queue. I got really good. I want to try to jump into the pro scene because now I'm, master or grandmaster now. And I'm going to try for challenger and try out for a pro team. Well, guess what? You're going to make an academy team. And then the academy teams are being used as a joke right now. G-Bait covers this really well in a most recent video of his, and in a Listen Loco with Thorin and Loco Doco, he kind of points out the fact that our academy system in North America is a massive joke. And the biggest reason is that North America is not utilizing it the way it's supposed to be utilized. The whole point of it is supposed to be bringing up new talent and building upon them, while the teams are doing one of a couple things. They're bringing in people just to hold them there so that the lesser teams can't get this possible new emerging talent and add them to their team potentially, which is one of the strategies I think some of the teams are doing, unless you're like Cloud9, who's actually building upon this team so that they could potentially have a 10-man roster swap and keep a lot of pressure on their current roster to make them play better. Like, you're adding in your own pressure to your team, which is good. That's a good way to make a more competitive nature within your team. But if you're looking at like TSM or even Clutch Gaming or a couple of these other teams, they don't seem to have that same edge that C9 has. And the biggest reason why is that they're not actively looking for the best emerging players and trying to build them up. One, they're not giving them the best coaches to do this. Two, they're just not scouting out these players. They get somebody from scouting grounds occasionally, which is once a year. You get to look at some of the best potential talent, but even then it's not the best potential talent. They're just looking at who is a already diversified player that has a chance of making a team. Nobody's actively going out there and being like, hey, let's start scouting these people. LS does this. LS is, if you don't know, is a Canadian coach who was part of the NA scene for a while. He is now currently in Korea with the BBQ Olivers, and he took over some North American players there that he thought had a ton of potential, and he's very good at looking at the eye. The problem is that North American analysts are not focusing on building up the region. They're focusing on looking at the current region. And this will start moving into the next topic here, and you're going to see a lot of these topics start bleeding together somewhat. But this is a systemic problem, right? Where's the competitive edge here? If your chances of making a pro team mean that you're going to have to go through academy, and then most of the time, that academy player is not going to get moved up unless somebody has an injury or somebody just starts playing so terribly and they need somebody to replace them immediately that they're going to push you in. You're still not going to make a great debut, right? Like, you're being put into a high-stress situation in one of these Q situations here. It's like, hey, we're performing exceptionally well with this person, but he got injured, so now you have to come in and fill in those shoes. Don't fuck up. Like, that's huge amount of stress for a new player. You are less likely to succeed in that situation, or they're going to be like, this person played terribly. As long as you play better than them, you're great. But we need you to also help turn around this team so that we can turn around this losing streak and make sure we still make playoffs. Like, most of the new players getting tossed in these high-stress situations, how are they going to succeed? You're not building up a competitive nature in them. You're just like, here's your chance. Good luck. Sink or swim. You're not building competitive nature. You're building a fight or flight, really. Like, if they fail horribly there, that's going to end their career real hard. So it's like, you're not looking to build up the competitive nature in the scene. You're not looking to be a better scene in that cart. It's just leading to the systemic problem. But from there, we're going to move into worst cultural understanding. And by cultural understanding, I'm not talking about understanding the culture of North America, though North American culture is extremely negative and extremely terrible. I'm talking about the cultural understanding of video games as a professional esports. Um, North America doesn't have a great understanding of this. When we're looking at it, we're looking at it as a game. Even a lot of the amateur individuals who go into ranked, we still have that nature of like it's a game. And at some point, all games that have a sports to them become less of a game at a certain level and become a sport. There's a differentiation between the two. When I play basketball with my friends, I'm not playing a sport. Though it is considered a sport, I'm not playing a sport. I'm playing a game. If I win that, cool, I have bragging rights over my friends. If I lose that, oh no, they get to brag that they beat me in a game of basketball. That's not high stakes at all. What differentiates a sport from a game is the stakes on the line here. So when you're looking at ranked here, what are the line being drawn here? What is that, edge that could make this a sports scene? Currently, there's no real incentivization for that. The best is you get to gold, you get a skin. So when you get into plat, what do you get? You just get a nice little border. Okay, when you get to diamond, what do you get? You get a nice little border. When you get to masters, what do you get? A nicer border. Grandmasters, even nicer border. Maybe you could start going for pro teams now. Challenger, you get a really cool jacket. You have a chance for pro teams, and people are going to want to watch your streams if you have a good personality. Like, the incentivization for getting better in League isn't really there. And this leads, again, the systemic problem of not having a good branching up. Like, as you get better, there's nothing to incentivize it, really. If you look over in Korea, what incentivizes it? You could get picked up if you're a master, grandmaster, or challenger to a Korean team. They have a smaller, amateur league. They also have their big league, and they have sister teams as well. So, like, you have so many systems that you can fall into in Korea. You look at EU. They have a ton of things you could go for. You could go towards the EU Masters grouping. You could go towards their semi-pro scene. You could go towards their academy scene. You could go towards their pro scene. Like, there's so many avenues in Europe as well. You come to North America, if you go into our semi-pro scene, nobody's going to know who you are. Nobody's going to watch you. We have a semi-pro teams here, guys. FYI, there is a semi-pro League of Legends league. I don't even know the name of it. The only reason I know it is it's on Wikipedia. You could go and see teams, and I'm like, what are these? They're North American organization teams that are playing in a semi-pro league with a ton of ex-pro players from other regions. You know why they're here? Because they make a lot of money in that semi-pro league. Even though nobody's watching it, nobody's talking about it, they're there. They exist. So, I mean, there are other avenues here in North America, but there's less coverage of it, there's less understanding of it, and there's no real way of knowing how to differentiate the game from the sport. And so that is the worst understanding that North America has. Korea, you know the difference too. If you want to play the game, you play norms with your friends, you go play draft mode or whatever. If you want to be competitive, you play ranked. Same thing goes kind of for EU. Though you do find your trolls and outliers in each of these systems, you are less likely to run into them as often as you do in North America. On top of that, the North American scene just doesn't evolve very fast. We don't have an idea of understanding how to evolve the metagame. We watch Koreans, we watch the Chinese players, and we even watch EU players to figure out what they're devising a metagame as, and we try to adapt it to that. Or Team Liquid plays their slow-ass composition through every meta and hopes to God that they can do it. Like, that's the two things that we got going on for us. We wait for other people to invent it, or Team Liquid just plays their really slow metagame and still dominates the rest of the league because nobody else has the same coordination that they do. So, like, the understanding of what you need to do is completely out the window for most people here. On top of that, you're looking at analyst and coaching staffs that are just not appropriated to the times. In many of the other esports right now, you have a coach, you have an assistant coach, you have an analyst coach with his team of analysts, and then you have now a psychiatric coach, or this person that is there to help your guys win the mental game. Because guess what? A lot of things about sports is the mental game, and I can say that from a personal experience of my own. I was a competitive fencer for about 3 years. I made it in my first year. I qualified for nationals. I didn't get to go because I didn't have the money, but I did know that if I wanted to win a tournament, I had a good shot at it. I was very good at it. But I would go against people that have ranks, by the way, which fencing does have ranking system. It's a letter graded ranking system. S being the highest tier, which I never got to play against. I never got to fence against. I say play because look, nowadays I don't take it as seriously as I did back then. But I never got to fence against an S rated fencer. The highest I got was an A minus fencer. That was still terrifying for me. That was in one of my first tournaments, and I instantly thought I was going to lose this match. Then I did. I didn't even score a point on him. Now, after which he's like, hey, dude, you had a lot of good moves there. You could have scored on me quite a few times, and you just seemed really skittish and really afraid. Why were you so afraid? I was like, because you could have capitalized on any of my mistakes. He's like, yeah, I did, because you made more. Like, you didn't get brave enough to attack me and take me out when I made mistakes. So I capitalized on your mistakes and won. And that there is a big part of competitive integrity and cultural understanding for sports. That is one of the biggest key things. If you choke, what's causing the choking? Your own hesitation. It's not your opponent being better than you. It's you hesitating and not realizing your opponent is a person too. It doesn't matter how good they are. Yes, Faker is a god. Does he make as many mistakes as everybody else? No, but does he make mistakes? He definitely does. And when he makes mistakes, he makes big mistakes. And you can capitalize on that. And if you capitalize on that and you keep beating him up and you get him in the mental game of like, God, this guy's crushing me. If you get him tilting, Faker becomes a person. You have every chance in the world to beat him at that point. So really, there's a big mental game in sports, and unfortunately, people aren't investing into these psychiatrists or team psychoanalyzation coaches or whatever the hell they're called now. Like, they're not investing into this, and this is a huge part of getting America over that hump. This is what would stand us out to start becoming a better region. Yeah, some of the teams have them, but do they utilize them to their best effort? It definitely doesn't seem like they are. And it doesn't seem like they're giving their staff the best chance to succeed. You know what they're looking for? They're looking for winning North America. They're not looking to win worlds, they're winning North America. And this is coming, again, from a misunderstanding of cultural separation here, even. Because in North America, we look for the very short game wins. We're looking for that immediate gratification. You got to gratify yourself as soon as possible. You aren't playing for 10 years down the line. Who knows if it's going to be here 10 years down the line? You're playing for now. So when you're playing for now, you don't get to make as many odd moves in the offseason. You don't get to build up your team. You don't get to work and progress over time. You have to be the best right now. And that means there's much more stress. There's less chances of success because your players are feeling that stress now. And if you're playing just for the now, you're not looking to the future of what comes after the now. So right now, what do teams play for? The NA/LCS Championship in spring. Okay, you lose spring. What is your next goal? We're now looking for summer. None of those teams say we're looking for worlds. We're looking at summer. So, why are they constantly only looking at the NA scene? Why aren't they looking to Worlds as that big end goal? And the biggest reason is because why are you looking so far ahead without looking at the current? And I get it. To a degree, it makes sense. You have to look at beating the current to get to the end goal. But if your end goal is not in mind to win Worlds, how can you go from, I'm trying to win NALCS. All right, I managed to win NALCS. I'm trying to win MSI. You don't win MSI. Okay, now we just need to focus that we're going to win summer. We win summer. Now we're going to win worlds. If you're constantly changing your focus like that, your team has to readjust their mental state. They have to readjust their focus. They have to readjust what they're going for. That takes a lot more than just saying, we're going for this now. Your team doesn't just jump from one step to the other. You don't just say, okay, we're going to break down step by step how to bake a cake. So now we're focusing on egg cracking. So while I'm egg cracking, I'm not thinking about what comes next. I'm not thinking about having to stir this next. So what's that going to take? That's going to take more time to get to the next step. Okay, I'm going to crack eggs. But I know after I crack eggs, I'm going to have to stir and whip those eggs. So I'll have my whisk out, right? That's a good step. That saves you time. That saves you effort. That means that you have it there ready to go. Opposed to later down the road, oh, I've cracked my eggs. Oh, crap, where's my whisk? You're going to take more time to figure out where that is. It's simple time management and effort management. That's not the greatest analogy, of course, because there's not a how high stakes of if you take a little longer to bake a cake. But in terms of competitive nature here, in this cultural understanding of the game, if you are only focusing on the short game, you don't have any plan for the long game, and you're going to have to come up with it you're going to have a lot less time to come up with it when you get closer to it. It's simple time management that teams are just not doing. So this is part of the reason that NA is sucking internationally, is because of this cultural understanding. This understanding of how do you treat this as a sport rather than a game. And even the coaches in NA are treating it like a game, not a sport. They're treating it for the short game. Games are for the short game, the short-term gratification. Sports are for that long-term standing at the top. So, what is the next step here? What is the next thing that this leads into? So if you're looking to the short game, are you really playing to win? No, you're playing not to lose. That is another big problem here. So if they're playing to win North America, they're not actually playing to win Worlds. They're playing to win the NALCS champion. That means you were playing to not lose during the season so that you make it into playoffs, so that then you could start playing to win. You're focused on not being last. You're focused on not being 7th. You're focused on being in the top 6. And most of these teams, except for maybe Team Liquid, TSM, and C9, are focused on making it into that. You'll hear them all say it. We're looking for 4th. We're looking for this. We're looking for that. Why aren't they aiming for 1st? Why aren't they aiming for Worlds? Because they want to set reasonable goals that they can meet. And if you set only reasonable goals, how can you climb higher than that? You can't. You have no expectation to climb higher than it. Sure, if you do manage to do that, it's a much bigger gratification, but that's again what they are playing for, self-gratification. They're, for that short-term gratification. They're not playing for the long-term. They're not playing to win. They are playing not to lose. And the difference between the two, when you are playing to win, you set higher goals than you think you can achieve. Because if you don't make it, you didn't make it. But you're going to work to make it next time. That goal is still there to be met. That is a hard goal to be met. You have something to work for. If you set an easier goal, like becoming an NALCS champion, that is much easier to achieve than becoming the world champion. So if you're setting it to this goal, you can probably make this goal. How are you going to set to the next goal? The next goal is not in sight for you. Team Liquid does not say, we're going to become the world champions this year. They're looking at how do they improve in the North America scene. How do they improve to compete later? Yes, they do count themselves as a North American champion, but then they go and backtrack and say, well, it's not guaranteed, so we're going to have to try our best. No. They should play like it's guaranteed. They've been the champions 3 times in a row now. They should now be playing like it's guaranteed and be looking to Worlds. That's how they become champions, right? That's how they have a chance of breaking out of this damn slump. They don't, though. They constantly are looking for that prize of NA champions. So if you're looking at this lower prize, you're looking for the low-hanging fruit. You will achieve the low-hanging fruit, but you will never get that fruit at the top of the tree. So, people in North America have a bad habit in all sports, including actual sports, to play not to lose. So if we go to football, for instance, which is something I know a lot about, I know a couple of teams that play not to lose opposed to win. Raiders have been doing that for years. Raiders have also been doing something very tricky for the past couple of years. They've built up a lot of draft picks and a lot of new capital they get to invest into their team to make their team better. And this has been a long-term effort of theirs behind the scenes for a while. They've kind of been sacrificing the short game to play for the long game, but they're playing not to lose so that they're not as bad in the short game, right? So that they can keep their fans somewhat happy, because if you constantly are only losing and show no hope whatsoever, your fans are going to stop being your fans. You're going to lose them, because that's how North America works. We're looking for the short term. We're not looking for the long term. Now, the diehard fans will be there forever, but you're looking at keeping some of them. So let's look at somebody like the Patriots. The Patriots win basically every year, right? They're always a contender every year. Why? Because their system is built in place to become champions. They are not playing to not lose. They're playing to win every game. They go into every game thinking, we're going to win this. And if we're going to win this, this is how we're going to win this. This is how we beat them. We know how they play. We're going to play against that. We're going to beat them. Yes, that is looking at the short game for this time, but they have a constructed plan in place weeks ahead of time so they can practice for that game. When they practice the week before a game, they're not always just practicing for that game. They are practicing time and putting time towards that game because that's their next closest game. But they are also working on fundamental things to improve themselves throughout the year so that they don't have to come up with individual plans for everybody. They just know that they're going to be better than everybody because they've already been able to beat certain teams. They've found ways that have succeeded, and they're going to keep doing these rollouts, and they're going to be able to evolve their plans so that when people are like, oh, we're going to play the Patriots this week, this is going to be the plan we're going to be building to beat them. Patriots are already building a new plan. They're already going and devising a new strategy. They're moving into a new way to win. Though it looks very much the same, they're changing up a few things here or there to make sure that their plan is slightly different and cannot be immediately countered by their opponents. That is looking towards the future. That is playing to win. Playing not to lose is simply saying, all right, our fear of losing is greater than our urge to win. If you're so afraid of losing that you're trying not to lose, is because you're afraid of what happens when you lose. You're not looking forward to what's happening when you're going to win. You're not incentivized to play that. So you're already lost the mental game at this point. And so you want to always play to win. You always want to look for that next step. You want to look forward and become the champions, the next champions. If that's the case, you have to look to the future. You have to look to, okay, if we win this, what do we do next to win? Like, you have to look steps ahead. You have to play ahead. But if you're playing just for that moment, you're playing not to lose. You are playing not to be beaten because you're afraid that losing will put you in a worse spot than if you just tie or win or whatever. Like, you're more afraid of the consequences of losing than the benefits of winning. Which leads me to the final thing. And if you notice, the biggest tie to all of this has been the mental state of players, right? What also helps, with that is positive reinforcement from your fans. Your fans are there like, hey, guys, yeah, you lost this one, but guys, we believe in you for the next one. I saw this in the Clutch Gaming community to an extent. Many of them did the same thing that most North American fans do. What is that? Why the fuck did you guys do this? Blah, 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 blah. They used hindsight to beat their favorite teams over the head with. And that's negative reinforcement. Hey guys, you lost, and let me tell you what you did wrong. That doesn't help them win for the future. It's not your job as a fan to be like, this is what you did wrong, this is how you did it wrong. No. Leave that to analysts. That's what analysts do. That's what coaches do. What is the fans' job is to be there and support them. But they don't have that support. They don't even have the news support, really. News is like still trying to determine if this is a legitimate sport. You still see casters laughing about it. ESPN guys are like, yeah, let's talk about esports, dudes. This shit's becoming really cool. Like, that's the only media that's like, yeah, let's do this, which is really encouraging and all. But when your fans are just like, either bandwagon fans like TSM fans or some of the top team fans who would just jump from the top succeeding North American team to the top succeeding team, or your fans are true fans but they want to think that they know how to tell you to be better than yourselves, that's not supportive. That doesn't help. This is kind of the smallest one, but this one is kind of what puts the nail in the coffin many of the times. For Clutch Gaming specifically, I could tell that those guys were beaten up rough all the time, and all their so-called fans would just be like, oh, you guys, why does Hooney suck so bad? Why does Lyra suck so bad? They start talking about these things of like, we need to replace these people, we need to do this, and it's like, why not show them support? And they're like, well, the season's basically over anyways. It's like, but is it? Support your team to the end. Support the players to the end. If the team decides to move out with new players, yeah, that's one thing. That's cool. But if you're already having in a negative mental state that this team sucks and you don't want to support them, how does that team think they want to play for you? Why would they want to play for their fans? Why would they want to play for themselves? Your fans don't have belief in you. You don't have faith in you. That just adds in more pressure to them to be like, we're going to lose. They're already in the mental state they're going to lose, so now they're playing not to lose to prove themselves wrong. They're not playing to win. They're not playing with that motivation like, we can dominate this. They're playing with the, if we win, that's great, but I'd really just not want to lose again so that these guys don't, constantly shit on me again. That's kind of the smaller one, but it's always that thing that small thing always helps put that nail in the coffin. It's that last little thing that just kind of like hammers all of this together. Negative fan support, negative self-motivation, negative cultural understanding, playing not to lose, and overall just not having a very competitive scene or a very good scene for growth. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know I rambled on for quite a while, and some of my points might have been a little bit scattered there. I tried to segue as best I could. I tried to keep them together as much as I could. If you guys liked the video, please hit the like button down below. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment down below telling me you liked it. If you guys got recommendations for the next podcast, I haven't come up with the topic for it yet. I have a few things in mind that I might talk about. So if you have something you're interested in hearing me talk about and ramble on about, please leave it down below. If you made it to the end of this video, I thank you guys so much for watching. And I hope, as always, you all have a very wonderful day. Thank you so much. Goodbye.